Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on the upcoming Autonomous Trucking Conference to be held on Wednesday, June 24th at the Holiday Inn in Fargo, North Dakota. I'm Chris Padilla with the Transportation Learning Network at Upper Great Plains Transportation Institute. Welcome. The purpose of today's webinar is simple: to give you a glimpse into the rapidly evolving world of autonomous trucking and a preview of the conversations that will take place at this year's North American Autonomous Trucking Conference. We are fortunate to be joined by some outstanding guests today. I want to thank Denver and our panelists for taking the time out of their busy schedules to join us and share their insights and experiences. So let's dive right in. Denver, let's start with you. For those who may not be familiar with the conference, can you give us a brief overview of this year's North American Autonomous Trucking Conference and what attendees can expect?
Sure, Chris. Well, first of all, thanks to you for allowing us this opportunity to talk to our TLN audience. We greatly appreciate it. This year's conference is entitled North American Autonomous Trucking, and we're not only focusing on developments in the United States, but also in Canada. And so in addition to Rich Steiner and Richard Bishop, who I'll be talking about in considerable detail later, we also have Aurora and Torque Robotics represented at the conference. They are two of the other leaders in autonomous trucking in the United States. We're also going to have Andrew Phillips from Transport Canada, and Rich Steiner and Andrew Phillips have collectively a wealth of knowledge about what's going on in Canada. I'm very interested to learn and to find out all the developments and how they're approaching autonomous trucking. In addition to that, we're going to have Caitlin Magdy Miller of Partners for Autonomous Vehicle Education, which is a national North American organization dedicated to spreading the word on autonomous trucking, and particularly talking and looking at some of the workforce needs that we will have going into the future, the specialized skills and various other things. We'll have a great panel, state DOT folks. We'll be very fortunate to have Amanda Abruzzo from Arizona DOT, where autonomous trucking is already happening in Arizona. It has been for several years. They developed a very good set of policies, regulations, and operational procedures. And so we'll hear from Amanda about what's going on in the Southwest. It'll give us a really bird's eye view. We also have Corey Johnson of Minnesota DOT and Eric Belford of Montana DOT, and those two states are working on AV legislation, looking to facilitate the deployment of autonomous trucking throughout the region. Of course, that would be very important to us in North Dakota to have our two partners on the east and the west side and have a better understanding of what they're looking at in terms of their policies, so we can synchronize, hopefully. We'll also have Maynard Factor of Kratos Defense, the leader in quasi-autonomous truck platooning, the leader-follower configuration, where the follower does not necessarily have to have a driver in the truck. They're expanding operations. They've also been involved to some extent in operations in Michigan, Indiana, and some other states. And of course, then we're hoping to have the FMCSA administrator, Derek Bars, give our keynote address. He is tentatively scheduled. He tells Richard and me and others that he has it in his calendar, but his schedule is completely variable, so we have no way of predicting whether or not he will be there or not. I think it's a good possibility, and we would really love to hear from him. But we're so grateful today to have two of the leading experts in North America on autonomous trucking, and I'd like to introduce them and then pose some questions to both of them. Richard Bishop is the principal of Next Generation LLC. And Richard has over 30 years of experience in the domain of intelligent, connected, and automated vehicles, and a really deep understanding of how they interact with our transportation system and society. Just a very unique, broad knowledge set that he has. Not just autonomous trucks, but he also focuses on autonomous cars and robotaxis. Richard provides strategic consulting to automotive manufacturers, suppliers, and tech firms, as well as advising federal and state government agencies in the U.S. and abroad. He led the Team Lux and the DARPA Urban Challenge, and he has since been surfing the waves, so to speak, of AV development and deployment, working with a wide variety of autonomous driving system developers. Richard has published extensively on Forbes.com as well as in Substack. And prior to establishing Bishop Consulting in 1997, Richard was the program manager for the Vehicle Highway Automation Program at the U.S. Department of Transportation's Federal Highway Administration. We're very pleased to have Rich Steiner, and greatly appreciate, given the circumstances, he just flew back on a red eye from California to Ontario, and he's drinking coffee like I am early in the morning. So really appreciative to both Richard and Rich for taking time in their busy schedules to be with us. Rich is the VP of Government Relations and Public Affairs for Gatik, which is really the market leader in automating regional logistics networks and in middle mile logistics, as Rich will talk about a little bit later on. And Gatik has operations in both the United States and Canada, a very unique perspective. Rich is a public policy professional with 15 years of experience in the private and public sectors, focusing on advanced technologies. At Gatik, Rich leads the company's legislative and regulatory affairs portfolio. Prior to coming to Gatik, Rich spent many years in senior management with the government of Ontario, so he has a very unique perspective on both sides of AT development and deployment. Before that, he led technical consultations in the UK, focused on energy from waste technology development and deployment. Rich holds a master's degree in public policy from the King's College in London. So with that, since I finished the introduction with Rich, maybe I'll start the first question with him. Rich, can you tell us a little bit more about Gatik and its operations in the U.S. and in Canada? I've been reading recently that Gatik has greatly increased the size of its autonomous truck fleet and has been adding customers and growing at a very significant rate.
Sure. Thanks, Denver, and very good morning to you and to everyone. And appreciate the warm welcome, and we're all looking forward to the conference in a few weeks' time. So, what can I share with you about Gatik, especially for folks that don't know? Maybe I'll kind of take a step back here. It'd be a good place to begin. I'll just situate us in the landscape of autonomous transportation. So, one end of the spectrum, you've got companies that Denver's mentioned. Some of them, Kodiak, Aurora, Stack, Wabi, going after integrating technology into Class 8 big rigs. So highway operating environment, long distances, big rigs, relatively high speeds on highways, and heavy payloads. The other end of the spectrum, you have B2C applications. What I mean by that is technology and companies delivering goods to a consumer's doorstep. So imagine a smaller device perhaps taking a pizza or a bag of groceries direct to your home. Where Gatik lives and succeeds right in the middle. So we move goods on regional short-haul networks between distribution centers and warehouses and retail locations where you can actually get your goods. Why should anybody care about this? Why is this so relevant today? If you cast your mind back to a few years ago, you enter your order in online, and you probably feel pretty comfortable when you see a message come up and it says, your goods will be available in a week. You get that message today, and you're rather more upset. The whole world has changed. Everybody wants stuff within a 2-hour pickup window or available at your local Walmart, Kroger, 10 minutes down the road. So in order to make that bit work, that bit of the supply chain work, you need more trucks, more trips, and more drivers. there's a lot of challenges with with those three items, and so automation on that portion of the supply chain ensures that we have a more robust and reliable supply chain. Folks get goods closer to home, higher frequency, lower cost. That's where we come in. So that's the portion that we automate, just to kind of situate Gatik for folks. Denver, to your point, yeah, we've been busy for all of the right reasons. We say this in all humility. We're growing incredibly quickly for our customers across North America. We have trucks now on the roads in Arizona, Iowa, Nebraska, Arkansas, Texas, and Ontario, Canada, where I'm based. So just to give folks kind of the range of states in which we're operational, not just Sunbelt states, right? This is, starting to look like real scaling across multiple different jurisdictions, different topographies, different climates, completely different markets and roadway operating environments. And I mentioned some of the customers we operate for. So Kroger and Tyson and some of the biggest retail e-commerce companies, across the continent. So we've really grown over the past decade or so, and started to establish roots, right the way across the country. So looking forward to sharing a lot more about some of the specifics there. But as I said, busy for all of the right reasons. So looking forward to talking about our company a little more.
Well, thank you so much for that great overview, Rich. Really appreciate it. Now I'd like to turn to Richard, you wrote a great Substack article earlier this year. I really enjoyed reading it, and you said that 2026 will be the year that we move from commercial pilots to broader autonomous truck deployments and business operations. So can you elaborate a little bit on what you think that 2026 and early 2027 will mean for autonomous trucking in the United States?
Yeah, certainly, Denver, and hello, everybody. I turned off my video just because I'm on the road. Who knows what the internet's like? We're seeing a lot going on, and of course, Rich just previewed that for us. The turning point at a small scale was last year when there were driverless trucks doing long haul and the Gatik fleet doing short haul, fully driverless operations. And as we're now in 2026, we've got two other companies, Bot Auto and Kodiak, who one has already gone driverless and another will do so later this year, as they say. So we have transitioned from the place of, let's say 2012 was when autonomous trucking really got started. Some of the startups happened then. And the question was, are you guys crazy? I mean, sure, it'll work on a test track, but what about beyond that? Then a few years later, there was a sense of, well, can you make it work in a reasonable sort of way in the right operational domain, that kind of thing. We have turned this major corner of it's not about will it work anymore to the companies that are the customers of these tech companies. The customers are very sophisticated. They have had years of experience with this technology in the sort of developmental phase, and now it's become all right. You gotta fit the operational requirements we have of you, the cost requirements, all of those things. It's not a tech gizmo issue anymore. It's about commercialization, and it's very, very important what these companies are doing.
Well, thank you, Richard. I'll just stay with you for the next question. At our conference on June 24th, you're going to be headlining a session on the role of original equipment manufacturers and autonomous trucking, and sort of the way the industry started out is that the AT developers themselves were developing and retrofitting the trucks, and that's still going to be going on, I'm assuming, but there are also some opportunities. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the partnerships that are being forged between the AT developers and the OEMs, and how you see these affecting the availability and marketing of autonomous trucks?
Yeah, sure. This is vitally important to have the truck manufacturers involved. The big fleets, all the fleets, all the folks who run trucks, they have a relationship with one or more truck manufacturers. Some of these relationships go back decades. They have developed trust, and they buy their trucks. And to ask these big fleets and small fleets to, here's some tech, let's work with them instead. That's kind of a non-starter. And so we have come to the place where the OEMs are front and center selling this to their customers with the Gatik built inside or Aurora built inside, which is the way the industry has always worked. And we've come far enough along. We see that Volvo, which is very far ahead with Aurora, to have their pre-production systems already putting out these vehicles from their manufacturing plant in a pre-production way, and next year they will be in full production. The same is true. Gatik is pulling a significant amount of vehicles from Isuzu, which then are sold to customers there. Several other companies. So we're seeing that, and what happens is the OEM is on the hook to the customer for the operational support, the warranty aspects, all of those things that a customer is looking for. So this is a really important maturing. The four main truck manufacturers for long haul Class 8 are Volvo, PACCAR, Freightliner, and International. All of these guys are working very closely. International is working with Plus AI. They'll have vehicles on the road next year. So that's where we stand in Denver.
Okay. Thank you, Richard. Now I'd like to turn back to Rich and ask a little bit about the first panel of the day at the conference is going to be on autonomous truck operations in Canada and the United States, and we've kind of flirted a little bit with that topic already. I'm greatly looking forward to that panel, but just as a preview, can you kind of describe the regulatory and policy framework in Ontario and maybe compare it to Texas or Arizona or some of the other southern states you're operating in the United States?
Yes, of course, happy to. And first of all, I'll just point out, because there is sometimes a perception, I think, that autonomous trucking, frankly, autonomous vehicles in general, is an unregulated industry, and that there are autonomous trucks out there just sort of roaming free in the wild. Which couldn't be further from the truth. So, in both the U.S. and Canada, the federal government has a considerable role to play by way of oversight. So, I mean, as a trucking company, we are beholden to every single federal motor carrier safety regulation, out there, just in the same way that any traditional carrier would be. So, we are heavily governed at the federal level in terms of vehicle safety regs, and then you come down to the state level, just as you do the provincial level in Canada, in terms of either the states or the provinces having specific authority over autonomous vehicle programs. So that's something which the federal government has kicked, at least for the time being, and we shall see. There's lots of interesting discussions happening at the federal level as well, but kicked to the states and the provinces to oversee. So this is a long conversation, but at a fundamental level, it's fair to say that Canada is certainly somewhat behind the US south of the border in terms of how far advanced the number of provinces are in Canada with a regulatory environment that allows for AV operation, autonomous trucking operation, versus states. a primary difference, I suppose, if we just want to talk about Ontario versus Texas. Ontario has taken a very structured and bifurcated approach to the deployment of or the regulation and deployment of autonomous vehicles. What I mean by that is in Ontario, which has had a robust regulatory regime in place since 2016. There's a driver in stream and a driver out stream. So, the province requires you as an operating company to, if you like, demonstrate and prove out your operations with a human safety operator on board prior to then transitioning to a driverless stream. So no human safety operator on board the cabin of the vehicle at all. Whereas there are states in the US, many, like Texas or like Arizona, which don't require that in quite the same way. And there's a somewhat different approach to sort of how that is viewed. Ultimately, though, the key consideration for any regulator, for any state and or province that's allowing autonomous trucks, and for any company that's working with regulatory authorities to do what we do. All of these programs, safety is front and center, right? So you cannot deploy an autonomous truck without working closely with any state and or provincial regulatory authority to do so. Submission of what's called a safety case, so a structured argument around exactly how and why your autonomous truck is safe to operate within a given set of parameters, an operational design domain, we say, so the operating environment. So for Gatik, that is operating within short-haul regional distribution networks, right, on repeatable, predictable routes. And there are different variations of that operating environment for different autonomous trucking companies. But the point being, unless you can prove that you can do that safely, you don't get a permit to operate. That's the simple truth of the matter. And so that common theme is what you will see absolutely everywhere. But there are slightly different, trends and takes on, the structure of different programs, across different jurisdictions. Ontario looks very similar to California, for example. California, and hey, this is amazing for me to be able to say at this point, but California opened up its regulatory structure to allow for autonomous trucks just recently, just a few weeks back, and that was many, many years in the making. So Ontario, California, you see a lot of similarities between those programs, but there are, some fundamental differences in the structure across programs in the US. But just calling out that safety is front and center for every single regulator and for every single autonomous trucking company operating under these regimes, and there's very robust two-way street of information flow as well for autonomous trucking companies. And I'll sort of come back to the federal level here, right? So for example, at the federal level, we are required as an autonomous vehicle company, should we be involved in any incident in which our automated driving system is engaged, we are required to report that at the federal level, right? And states as well have similar and additional reporting systems. So again, it's a very transparent and accountable universe in which we operate, right? I suspect there are some folks from DOTs on the line here in markets where we operate. I'm in constant conversations, discussions with regulatory authorities, departments of transportation, departments of motor vehicle across the country, places where we operate to ensure a healthy two-way flow of information. Folks are very rightly interested to know what's going on with autonomous trucks operating in their jurisdictions. We have the microscope on us, I think, in a lot of respects as an industry, and rightly so, right? I mean, we're talking about trucks with no human behind the wheel of a vehicle. So this is still a relatively young, nascent industry, comparatively speaking, and so it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we are being good actors, safe actors, and having a very healthy and continual flow of discussion with folks who oversee our operations. So there, as much as there are differences, there are strong commonalities across the US and Canada. And safety, number one, robust flow of information, number two, and one thing I'll just leave you with, Denver, is we're not doing anything in a vacuum, nothing in isolation. We work very closely with regulatory authorities to make sure that we do what we do, safely and in a structured fashion.
Thank you, Rich. And I'll just stay with you for maybe a quick question. There's a lot of folks out there that hear about Gatik and they'd say, oh my goodness, we'd love to have Gatik providing services to us in this area. You know, lots of food distributors, processors, perishable food companies, things like that. What are some of the most important factors that you look at when evaluating new markets or areas for autonomous truck operations?
Yeah, that's a good question. So I'll take a little bit of a step back here again and maybe introduce folks to our platform a bit more. So we integrate our automated driving system, so our technology, the brain of the truck, into Isuzu vehicle platform. So we've been working closely with Isuzu for many, many years at this point. It was a really organic fit as far as the partnership was concerned. Isuzu's been best in class for medium duty trucks for 100 years, and we're the only game in town as far as operating medium duty autonomy on road is concerned. So really good sort of marriage there of our technology and the vehicle platform. We outfit the chassis, the cabin chassis, with 26, 30-foot boxes, depending upon the platform and the operations. We custom fit those boxes with reefer units so we can deliver dry, refrigerated, frozen goods, depending on what it is that we're transporting, and ultimately consider ourselves to be goods agnostic in that it doesn't matter if it's groceries or pharmaceuticals or consumer electronics or whatever, provided that we're delivering goods on those repeatable, predictable, short-haul routes, we're good to go. So there's a huge range of customers that we move goods for, a huge different type of goods. So in terms of what we're looking for, this is sort of coming to the question here. We're not at the stage anymore. This isn't 10 years ago where we're deploying, a small handful of trucks for a customer. We look for customers with large networks with whom we can really grow and densify. As much as we'd love to be able to deploy a sort of small number of vehicles with smaller customers, and I think eventually that may become a possibility. For now, and certainly for the foreseeable future, being able to densify networks with customers with a national reach in terms of infrastructure, who have the capacity for us to integrate their solution with is really what we need and what we look at. So when you look at a new market, a market that has a large number of similar customers, as I've just described, in one area, is always very helpful. One of the reasons for that is we've actually had some incredibly useful operations in terms of sort of dual purpose on one route. So what I mean by that is delivering goods for customer A, by the day, high priority, and then on the same route, by night, lower priority. So you can maximize 24/7 one route with multiple customers, that type of thing. But looking for customers that have that large infrastructure and dense networks for us to truly be able to scale up in is certainly important for a company at our stage of growth.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, I'd like to go back to Richard for some closing comments. We've only got a couple of minutes left, Richard, but quick question. Do you see autonomous trucking developing more quickly in private trucking or in the for-hire sector, or are there adjustments needed in the for-hire sector to accommodate autonomous trucking?
I don't see significant differences. There are different financial issues, et cetera. One thing I want to touch on really quickly to flesh out what I was saying before, there are two business models. One is transport as a service, and one is driver as a service. So the guys who are working with the OEMs, it's driver as a service that I described. Transport as a service is what some of the long-haul AV companies are doing, as well as what Gatik is doing, and so that's a very legitimate way of doing things. They're like a third-party freight mover, and some of those companies are really rolling along.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you, Richard, and thank you, Rich. We're out of time now, but we tremendously appreciate what you've done today, providing us with some insights, and we look forward to seeing you at the conference on June 24th, and we hope to see many of the audience members there as well. So again, any questions regarding the conference registration and anything, you can go to the UGPTI webpage. Chris can provide you with additional information. So I'll turn it back to you now, Chris, and thank you again for hosting this webinar.
Of course. One last thing that I would ask of, I guess, Denver or even Rich or Richard is if anybody is on the fence with coming to this conference, what would you say to them to encourage them to attend? What would be one of the biggest, I guess, encouragement or pieces you could give them to make them make that jump?
Oh, that's a great question.
Knowledgeable in this space. You're going to pick up information that you won't get from, internet stories.
Thank you guys for joining us so much today. We really appreciate your time and attention during the session. Thank you again, Denver. Thank you, Rich and Richard. Richard, travel safe the rest of the way, but there is a link to the conference site. So if you want to go learn more information, the agenda is out there, the registration link is out there, and it's free to register. So it costs you nothing to register and to attend. You're just your travel and your overnight stay if that's what you're planning on doing. Thank you again for attending, and we hope to see you at the conference in Fargo.